check, check. Hey, hey, check, check.
This is one of two town halls we're going to have today to talk about the strategic plan. We want to hear your input. We want to go over some of the successes we had in the first plan, introduce you to our new co-chairs, and then just hear from you and tell you a little bit about how we plan to move forward. You know, what we had was a great strategic plan. It was a 3-year plan, and it's not like we wadded that up and threw it out. So now it's just tweaking that plan for the next 3 years. And the reason we're looking at a 3-year window instead of a 5-year window is we have so much to do on this campus, and we want to make sure we don't sit back and do a planning year and then maybe an implementation year. We have to jump in with our strategies right away because we want to affect positive change. Could I have the next slide? So here were just some of the accomplishments that came out of the first plan. We had an all-time high graduation rate. It is not high enough, and we still have an achievement gap. So while we are pleased to see it going up, this is one of the biggest interventions we want to do. And then for those of you in the audience and listening online that do research, we just want to say thank you. Record-breaking year with $201.5 million in research, and that's 30 million more than we had the previous year. And we just hope that trajectory keeps going, and we hope that we're able to hire research-ready, research-interested faculty who can keep that going. We established 2 new centers as a result of the plan. One was the Employee Success Center, which I hope any of you that went through new orientation during this 3-year period got a chance to go through that newly revamped way to welcome people to the campus. And they also have established a lot of employee resource groups based on different affinity groups. So that's a big success, and it's one of the ways that we can help recruit and retain really top talent here at the University of Louisville. The other center was in the Learn category, and that's our Center for Engaged Learning. That's the place where we want students to get engaged in undergraduate research, because if they do that, we know that's a thing that makes them retain and persist and graduate. And also, we want them to be doing internships out in the community. So anytime I'm talking to community leaders, I say, we need to place our students in your business, and we need you to pay them while they're working in your business, and that could be your future employees. So that was really important. We had growth in online programs, we won diversity awards, and we launched and staffed our U of L Digital Transformation Center, which we need to tap into for our Cardinal Core. And then I know you've seen the branding, and frankly, it's the branding on these slides for our new Here and Beyond campaign, one of our campaigns that have been a long time coming. So we're really excited about that. So next slide, please. I wanted to introduce you to the co-chairs. They're sitting up here in the front, and I'm just going to call their names and their affiliation. They'll raise their hands, so you'll get to know them. So you all know Gail Dupuis. She's the Senior Vice Provost, and she's also a professor in industrial engineering. And she and Erica Gabbard, and Erica, raise your hand, were the leaders of our strategic plan in its first iteration, and they did a fantastic job. We have Whitney Nash, who's Assistant Vice President of Interprofessional Practice Partnerships, Professor and Associate Dean of Practice and Service. And did you raise your hand?
I did.
Thank you very much. David Schultz, Professor of Biology and Arts and Sciences, and he's currently our Chair of the Faculty Senate. Nakia Strickland is Associate Director, Alumni Relations, Office of Advancement. And then we have Krista Wallace-Boaz, Associate Dean and Professor of Piano and Pedagogy, School of Music. So I think if you don't mind, we'll give them a round of applause because they're going to be working hard on all our behalf, so we appreciate that. So in the next slide, I'm going to talk about just some of the things that we're doing a little differently this time than we planned last time. One of the things we wanted to do, if you remember, we have 3 pillars, learn, work, and invest. And we had a lot of conversations, and we felt like while the word invest is critical for our future, invest seems like a one-way street. Give us, give us, give us. And we thought that given our metropolitan placement as a metropolitan university, we needed to make sure we focused on connection. And so we wanted to change the word invest to connect. Now, connection leads to investment, and those investments can be in time, talent, and money. So that was the way that you're going to see the third pillar now as connect. The other thing we wanted to do is not focus on lower level ideas, but focus on higher level ideas, because then once that loftier idea is there, we tap the people who are going to do the implementation, do those steps to get us to aspirational goals. Where are we going to be in 3 years? What kind of institution do we want to be in 3 years? And if we stick down in strategy, we sometimes don't aim high enough. And so you're going to see a little bit more broader language in this. We're going to decrease the number of actions and strategies. We had so many that it meant we were diluting what we wanted to do. We're going to have to hit things hard in the next 3 years. And if we have so many metrics, it dilutes our work. Now, there are metrics we always have to measure, because we have to send things in to our Council on Post-Secondary Education, which is our higher ed authority, and then our Board of Trustees wants data. But for this plan, we want it to be kind of focused in on what we want to do. We aren't having a ton of targets because, let's just say, student success. We have the Demographic 25 Steering Committee that finishes their work in June. It has over 60 people across campus telling us where we need to be for student success. Let's take that work and let that be the implementation of a broader, higher level student success goal. And then the thing that I ask, if it's something we do and we do it all the time, let's not include it in the plan. Let's make our plan the reach. We want the plan to be where we want to be. What did Wayne Gretzky say? Skate to where you know the puck is coming. I'd like somebody mark down that I used a sports analogy correctly, and I used it correctly. That's more important. But that's what we want to do. Where do we want to be? The whole thing that I want us to be thinking about every day is what makes U of L distinctive. Now, the fact that we are known as one of the top 3 institutions for access for Black students and Latina students should be a point of distinction. But it can't be until we're able to say, when we get those students in here, we also graduate them. So distinction means something that's a success metric. I'm really proud of our access model. I'm really proud of the fact that we have between 38 and 40% of our students as Pell eligible. But until we show that we get them through and they don't leave with debt and no degree, it's not a point of distinction. So that's what I'm talking about when we look at what makes us, hopefully in 3 years, one of the main institution of choice in our state. Next slide. So here's a little bit of the timeline that you'll see. It's fast-tracked because we aren't doing a complete pivot with the plan. So we have drafts on these 3 pillars, and that the draft is complete. And then we're trying to get feedback all over campus, which is what today is. The next slide, please. And you see the town hall that you're sitting in today, and I really appreciate you coming out and hope you'll let us know where you want to see us go. And then in June and July, that's when we'll have the final version sent, and then we will have it approved by the Board of Trustees, and then we'll do a launch with implementation in September. Next slide. So what I'm going to do now is just show you the pillars and some of the draft actions that we have, the strategies and the actions. And remember, these are drafts, so if you have comments about them or you see something missing, this is the time to share with us. So we want it to be a great place to learn. We want our students to succeed now, later, and beyond. We want to make sure that not only they graduate with a degree, but they graduate with a degree that will allow them to move into what I would call a good job, a high-paying job, so social mobility is a fact. And we know right now that isn't happening to the degree that it should. So we are going to do that through making sure we have engaged learning activities for our students. Next slide. So when we look at the strategies, of course we want to attract, retain, and graduate talented students, diverse students that will make our campus richer for having been here, and will make us work hard to give the wraparound services that our students will need. Keep in mind that students coming to us this year and probably for the next 5 or so years had lost learning during COVID. So we're going to be challenged even more to focus on student success. So this strategy has 3 different actions. One is interdisciplinary degrees and certificates or credentials. You know, we may have students that don't even want to get an undergraduate degree, but they want a series of stacked credentials that could get them started in the workplace. We should be looking at those. Our students have been telling us for probably 20 years that they want interdisciplinary degrees. And you're saying, how did they tell us that? When you ask a student, what's your major, how many things do they say? Either a major with 2 minors, 2 majors and a minor, or they're getting a certificate in something. We have so many creative faculty that could blend together interdisciplinary degrees to solve the problems of tomorrow. So that's one of the things we hope to see. We really want to make sure that we know the life cycle of a transfer student, of a military-connected student, first gen, underprepared, under-resourced, and we know it's not a one-size-fits-all, so we develop the right supports for students that come to us from different life experiences and different levels of opportunity. And the third is that we try to remove barriers and figure out what are the barriers. Finance is one of the biggest barriers for our students. Sense of belonging, another barrier. So how do we tackle those things? We were able to tackle finances really well during COVID, and so now we have to see what strategies we can do to tackle it without the extra money from the federal government. These actions are where we can become distinct as an institution if we can build success on those areas. Could I have the next slide? So then we have a second strategy, and we want to prepare our students to solve the problems of tomorrow, to be those critical thinkers, to have those essential skills that employers want. We want every student, this is a lofty goal because I just said every student, to have some sort of high impact practice, some sort of experiential learning. Because we know if a student works with a faculty member in research, we have one here that just won the Goldwater because she's been doing cancer research. We know that works to help people retain and then move on to great things. So we want them to be out in the community. We want to keep as many of our graduates as we can in Louisville, and if we can't keep them there, in Kentucky, so we can impact the economy of our state. And the second action is to have students who have those essential skills. And those are sometimes called soft skills, but they're not if they're essential. And we need to be letting our students know in the classroom, when you take my class, here are the essential skills you learn along with your discipline. Let's put those on the syllabus. So a student, when he looks at a job ad, says, well, I have that skill because I did it in sociology. I have that one I did in English. I did that in history. I did that in math. And they understand what their skill set will give them out in the workplace. So those are the learning strategies and the actions, and we're going to talk about all those in a minute. Could I have the next slide? And this is on work. We want it to be a workplace that's dedicated to growing our faculty and staff, to rewarding our faculty and staff and recognizing them. And I think one of the things we want to start looking at are what are the social determinants of work? What are the things about a person can impede or support their work life? If they don't have access to good transportation, that's going to impede their ability to work for us. We also need to understand that when we hire a person, we hire the whole person and not just the skill set that the person brings. So that's really important to us. We want to live our values. We want to live our cardinal principles. And on the next slide, you see, we want to foster a culture of trust and care, accountability, equity, and transparency. So because there's been so many transitions at University of Louisville, like interim, it's shaken the trust of the campus, because about the time you get joined in and think, oh, we're going to move forward, then somebody leaves and you think, oh my gosh, are we going to have to start all over again? So we need to work on trust. It's why I'm doing conversations with faculty and staff now until the end of December on how we build trust on our campus. So we want training programs for leadership. We should be doing leadership training so we have the next generation of associate deans, the next generation of deans, directors, vice provosts, so that we're growing our leadership cadre here on campus. When we do that and we have strong leaders that are either positional or just have had good leadership training, that's when we can work on the culture and climate, and that is a critical part for us. We want everyone here to feel valued and that their work matters. And so going through the cardinal principles and talking about the ones that resonate with individuals, but the ones that we try to use in our decision making, and also making the anti-racist agenda something that is real. We have talked about it, and now is the time for us to put metrics to it and strategies to it and report to people on those strategies. That's critical for our future. And then I've been talking with David Schultz about Action 2 is sort of what I call barrier busters. You know, if it takes 8 people to approve something that a researcher needs, and really the only people, there were only 2 that needed to approve it, don't send it to my office. I don't know the researcher. I don't know if that researcher has the money to do it. Let's pare down what we're doing in administrivia that just adds frustration to people, and let's kind of take the burden as much as we can, particularly off our faculty and staff, and let them do only what needs to be done. Next slide. So this is really a work strategy about attracting and retaining. You know, just like I said with students, it's the same story. We are able to attract, but we're not always able to retain. We have a great benefits package, but we've fallen behind in compensation. And I will tell you, compensation is the main priority for us around our staff. So we want to provide professional development opportunities for our staff. We also want to compensate our employees appropriately. And then we want to onboard people. So here's what we do when we get a new department chair. We say, thank you for being department chair. Here's your office. And that's really about all we do. We don't teach them about the budget. We don't help them understand how to evaluate faculty and staff. And so we need to do a better job of onboarding and getting people comfortable with the job so they can start doing it well. And then the other thing that we want to codify and make sure every employee has the opportunity to tell us why they're leaving. You know, we need to know why they're leaving. If we see one unit has too many people leaving from it, we want to investigate why that is. So those are the work strategies. And so connect, thank you. We want it to be a great place to connect because we know if we build friends out in the community, if we build partnerships out in the community, if we work together, we can solve bigger problems in Louisville, and U of L can take the lead on that and can also let somebody else take the lead and us be a partner. We do this through our teaching, to our research, to our community engagement, to student engagement, and all the creative activity that we bring to the city. If we are strong and we do well, Louisville will do well too. And I think we should know that we are always linked together, and we have a responsibility to make sure Louisville thrives. So in the Connect strategies, you'll see we want to improve access, value, and impact of community, industry, and government, and alumni partnerships. We want people to know if you want students to come into your organization, here's the place you go. You don't have to call 20 people to know. If you need a faculty member that's engaged in environmental health research, we need to have a place where you can come and find that person. Somebody might need assistance setting up a business plan. We need to have those resources available so people understand we are the place to come when you're talking about partnerships and making Louisville better. And then we also want to make sure that we market what we do. We have so many good stories that we don't tell outside of U of L. I mean, miraculous things that happen here every day, and we need to really make sure that we tell it locally and nationally and internationally. The Meyer Awards is a perfect example of something that we do that is extraordinary. A $100,000 prize for someone in music, in education, in political science or world order, in psychology and religion. That's really unbelievable. And we know about it, and I bet maybe even some of you didn't know it was a $100,000 prize. So it's pretty amazing. And it is, we want to make sure people know that we're the ones that do it. So in the next, we want to make sure that we remain the research and innovation engine of the city, region, and state. And that means taking that research park behind engineering and really making it a real research park. we're working with the foundation to see, can we build some buildings and bring in outside researchers to make that a true park so that they work closely with faculty on innovation. We want to make sure that our centers of excellence are pulled together when there are synergies and elevated so that the community and, frankly, our economic development people in the state and city know what we're doing. And then also that we celebrate all those things that will empower our communities, our different neighborhoods across the city, and that we can enhance the culture, the climate, and frankly, what it means to be a Louisvillian because U of L is in your backyard. So those are the draft strategies, and remember I said they're draft. And now there's a couple of ways you can give feedback. One, we're going to talk to you today, but if you look here, you can also go and give your feedback if you think of something later, or you go, they didn't mention anything about, and I'd like to know what they're going to do about that. So I think with that, we open the floor to questions, and let's start to see, was there any questions in the chat? Okay, good. So if you have a question, if you don't mind to come to the microphone or a comment, we'll welcome. Doesn't have to be a question because we're live streaming this and we want people to hear what you had to say.
Or just a quick side note about that.
Go to the microphone. Sorry.
Just a quick side note about that URL. You could also just type in strategic.plan and it'll take you where you need to go.
Okay,
as well.
Great. That's easier to remember. That's good. So did we forget anything, or are there words you didn't see? Great.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for doing this. I came in a couple minutes late. I apologize for that. I was wondering if there was anywhere that there had been a sort of a taking of stock of the 2019 to 22 strategic plan.
Yes.
And where I can find that. And then I actually had a question about this one too, but.
If that goes to strategic, yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if this is on.
It's on, isn't it, Isaiah? It's on.
Okay. Yeah, so if you go to the just U of L website and just type strategic plan, it'll take you to the webpage, and there's the year 1 and the year 2 reports are in there.
Okay, great.
And then the year 3 report will be coming out later this fall.
Okay, thank you. Great, thank you. And then the programs driven by employer demand, the arguments for interdisciplinarity were given by reference to student demand. And I worry that chasing employer demand is a fool's errand, and I know that the state requires it, and they need you to show that there are jobs in this specific thing. I worry that I worry that the empowerment of employers who are fickle, who might say they want something but they don't really want it, who might leave.
Sure.
It seems like a very short-term basis for thinking about the value that we can add to students for careers as a whole.
What I will say about interdisciplinarity, I think that's going to be driven by the faculty in looking at, to me, large societal issues and what kind of programs can we come across. We already have neuroscience. That has all sorts of disciplines coming together. So, if an employer said to us, we need a graduate who can take a widget and turn it into a doodad, we're not going to do that. But, if we have our humanities students, for example, they will be strong in the discipline, but we need to also show them what those employer skills are, what those essential skills are, working in teams, oral communication, written communication, critical thinking, all those kinds of things that we do in the classroom, but we don't always tell our students that's what you did. And so in Kentucky, a family member will say, what do you do if you're an English major? There is so much you can do, but you rarely see an ad saying English major. So I think the faculty will want to come together around bold ideas, solving tomorrow's problems, and helping our students be the kind of person that employers don't even know they need yet.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Afi Tagneji, and I'm a student here. So my question is about retaining students in the strategic plan. I worked on the previous strategic plan throughout the last 3 years, and a major issue and a point of concern throughout was that we'd have student representatives in the beginning, but as the semester went on, there was sort of no incentive for them to stay, because a lot of the conversations that are happening are usually very abstract and it's more administrative work. But I think that all type of administrative work requires student input, so I would definitely like to see a section on how you plan to recruit and retain students who are usually not represented. And that was also another point of concern, because a lot of times in these things, when there is quote unquote student representation, it's already students who are super involved like myself, and that's sort of like a bias that comes with the people you're able to reach. But I'd like to see some targeted efforts are reaching non-traditional students and transfer students and sort of recruiting them into this effort. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Anybody with comments from the staff side?
I have a question really about the financials of all this. So, like, just to give a specific example, so we know with the compensation study, you're probably going to be going back to certain units and saying, you know, your staff is under market. How do the financials play into all of this and other resources?
So the financials are going to play in almost every part that we're talking about, right? And so in the compensation study, what we're working on right now is what are the sources of funding that we will use to improve compensation. And one of the strategies that we've been using right now, and we could continue to use, I'm going to say this, and I hope this number is right, but I think the foundation, because of growth in the endowments, will be shifting $80 million over to the units this year. Does that sound right? I'm pretty sure it's right. Jerry, I think I've had 2 head nods. So what you do then, it's a unanimous. So what you do then is you shift some of your general fund cost onto foundation dollars, onto endowment spend, because the endowment continues each year to grow. Then we can take those general fund dollars, those are recurring funds, and put them toward compensation. So that's one strategy we're doing. And so, you know, we're looking at other ways we can sequester money for those raises. The state this year gave us more money in performance funding. So the way we get new money into the institution is retention and graduation of students, number of STEM majors, number of underprepared, under-resourced students that we graduate, number of first gen that we graduate. But the problem with that money is it's one-time money. So you can't put a person's compensation on one-time money. So they're going to do a task force this spring, and I've been talking to the president of the CPE, and we've been saying we need part of that money to always go to base, always go and be non-recurring, that we know they're not going to take away. And if we can get that to happen, then Kim, that's another source of recurring dollars that can go to compensation. Because right now, the only way we get new money for compensation is if we raise tuition, which we really don't want to do, or the state gives us money just for that, and they haven't done that in 20 years, I think. So the other place that we're going to have a lot of resources is when this Demographic 25 committee that has about 8 subcommittees gives us the implementation recommendations. We got to implement them. And so that could be moving resources around, reallocating, but it's going to take new resources too. So Dan Durbin and I are forever looking at how we can make that happen. Did any members of the committee want to make a comment or that's all right, yes.
I have a faculty question. More of a comment. I am a biochemistry major, so I fall under like the chemistry branch, and I do not have like black faculty teaching at the high level. I think there's only one black faculty in the chemistry department, which has always been a concern for me. So if I wanted a mentor that had similar lived experience, who did research, etc., I had to go to the health science campus. And even there, it's few and far between. I think I've met like only 2 of them in the entire health science campus, and they're not even in my fields. So I think that representation of faculty is a major, major issue, considering the number of students who are in research and the number of underrepresented minorities who are in research at the University of Louisville. Needs to be more pointed effort in recruiting faculty of color in specific STEM fields, and I vote chemistry to be at the forefront of that because we only have one chemistry faculty who's black. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything you all want to say? I want to give you, you don't have to say anything.
I would just encourage everybody to go to the site, take a look at the plan, maybe take a look at the year 1 and year 2 reports just to see what progress we've made and where that progress has occurred, and then give us your feedback, please. We're ready to look at that. We'll be collecting that until June, beginning of June. We'll be collecting all the comments, sort of theming them, figuring out sort of what the general themes are, and then using that to help us revise the plan. Hello.
I have 2 questions. The first one is for my students. I'm in advising, and I'm lucky because I'm in the business school, and we have our Elmer Center that really prepares our students to go out and market themselves in the workplace. But I'm a proud A&S grad and a CEHD grad, so I was lucky. I knew I wanted to stay in college forever, so I'm going to go work for U of L. So, but new students coming out with their bachelor's, are we looking at anything about career placement as opposed to career development?
I think the Center for Engaged Learning is going to be a big piece that's going to help with that. I think, we get the students internships and co-ops and doing work outside the classroom while they're still students. I think there's a lot of advantages to that. One, it helps make connections with industry and community partners. And 2, it builds those essential skills, the employability skills or essential skills or whatever we want to call them, that can help those students then get those positions later.
Excellent. And then my other question, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and when I'm talking to people that are CEOs or leaders in industry, they want our students because they want an educated workforce, and they want to grab them as their students so they can keep them after they graduate.
And then my second question is as a staff member. So currently, when you're looking at the compensation study or you're looking at positions, in order to be able to grow, you have to be a supervisor, and that's not always possible. So is there a plan for staff that are excellent in what they do? I'm thinking of advising in particular, and I know Dr. Dupuy is working on that. But so there's whether an in-range or some sort of career ladder so we can keep excellent staff, but they don't have to go and supervise.
So our compensation study that we're doing is the company that's helping us is Siegel. And they're actually going to do job families so that within, these are not the right words, but within a band, you have some upward mobility as you gain more skills and get deeper into it. And that would have a bump in compensation. And then if you go to the next band, it would be that you gain these other essential skills and can move up. Because what we do right now is if we have somebody we want to keep, we reclassify them and add some jobs to whatever they're doing that doesn't make much sense. And this has what I would call a career ladder for certain job classes. And that's going to be the thing that keeps people that are great advisors moving up the career ladder.
Thank you. Love that jacket, by the way.
Thank you.
Lauren?
Yes.
And I can just may have a little side note to that. That's something that about 30 years ago they did in nursing to keep nurses at the bedside, and it worked extraordinarily well because not everybody wants to be a manager. And so that was a way to just, as you develop, enhanced skill set, you're rewarded for that. So I see that as a real positive.
It is. I came from University of Tennessee Health Science Center before I moved here, and the same company had done the job families for us, and it just made a difference in slotting somebody at the level they were, but then giving them within that level the chance to have some upward mobility. And Connie?
Thank you for accepting that and being in that question, because my question, and I really appreciate that in the work strategy, action 1 about implementation and incentivize the leaders. I like the framework, but I also would like to see it as mandatory. Why? Because they think, oh, well, maybe I will get more money, but I don't have to if I don't want. So I like that, the way that you are presenting, but making it mandatory, because I know sometimes it's good that one of the person who are very good in the job, maybe is not the best leader. And that happened a lot. When you become a leader, you don't have the skills and you don't have the support. Or maybe there's the support. I know there's some, the Successful Center is having all those resources, but they don't feel like I need it or mandatory. So I just would like to just twist a little bit that and how we can support them, and not only to become the good employers, but also the best leaders in that terms. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I won't stand here in like 20 minutes and nobody comes up, but I do want people to really have a chance. Is there anything in the chat? Any questions online? Okay. Sure. We'll take a two-timer.
So you mentioned the Demographic 25 committee, and then there's the Strategic Plan committee, and then the provost has a committee. And I'm wondering how these intersect, and whether what comes out of here will be overridden by the Demographic 25 committee, whether this will override the provost committee,
Okay.
et cetera.
So the Provost Committee and the Demographic 25 Committee are the same. So it's that Demographic 25 is out of the Provost office, okay? Right?
I think
Oh.
Avery might be meaning the Strategic Plan Committee
I'm
for
sorry.
A&S
Oh,
from the
A&S.
Provost office.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Excuse me. Well, so I'll answer this, and Jerry, you might even want to come and answer, but the A&S program is so that we make sure that we protect and keep vibrant arts and sciences, which is the intellectual heart of every campus. We have to make sure that we stop the bleed in student credit hours. The overarching actions and strategies in the plan about student success will be fed by the Demographic 25 committee. So the individual strategies and action items will come out of that committee. So it's a perfect kind of dovetailing of a large group with faculty, staff, and students on it to tell us how we make sure we take care of our students in the right way. Now, I don't know, Jerry, do you want to make a comment? You're more familiar with arts and sciences than me.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, Avery, as you know, we had a lot of conversation actually in our meeting on Friday about some of the themes that actually would be feeding into sort of student retention and student success. And I think a lot of those factors are going to overlap. Now, the good news is they're all coming into our office. And so, you know, part of the A&S Strategic Planning Committee is for the college itself, in particularly as it looks forward to the future about interdisciplinarity. But a lot of the issues that we've talked about clearly feed into the demographics. So I see just a lot of synergy between them. And again, they'll all be coalesced and coordinated in the Office of the Provost. So I think it's just repetition sometimes, and that gives you some validation that you know that there's broad support from many, many different committees and different groups within campus. Make sense?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm happy for this sort of accountability and checking in, and I just want to know that we have similar rich accountability at all in all committees, going into all committees.
You know, one of the pillars of work was on transparency. And, you know, Jerry and I have been trying to do these newsletters, not newsletters, little notes that come out every other week, just to tell you what we're thinking, and it's not always go to this thing or go to that thing. We're trying to show transparency always in the budget so you know where the money is and where it isn't. And so that movement of bringing everything together to float up into the right strategies is part of the transparency and accountability that I think we have to use as our touchstones as we go forward.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. See, I knew if I waited a few seconds, I might get somebody. Hey.
All right, hello. I have a couple of comments, so just please bear with me. But it's mainly about like the cardinal anti-racism agenda in this upcoming strategic plan. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a huge jump from the last one, since specifically, explicitly in the strategic plan, aside from like the cardinal principles, there wasn't anything listed regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so to that, it's more of a comment in terms of, and it's rhetorical, but how does the cardinal anti-racism agenda tie into the learning and connecting aspect for our students and our community? I guess a perfect example is from the Black Business Summit that was just hosted last week. That was an amazing experience for myself. And then I guess in terms of suggestions, in terms of how that works into, the learning and connecting, but also correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there's not like a university-wide DE&I training for faculty and staff. And I know units and departments can like request them, and I'm not saying that to, stretch out our Office of Diversity and Equity thin in terms of doing a bunch of trainings, but I do believe it's a starting point from just the things I've experienced and the things I've heard from students, whether that's a professor purposely not using the correct pronouns and things like that from students. It's a lot. And as we heard from Afi talking about earlier in terms of like research opportunities and not having someone who looks like them in what they're trying to do, but then also like the demographic makeup of our students who are doing research and like who's being awarded these opportunities for our students. So yeah, that was just pretty much it.
Good.
So
thank you. Thank you.
Is there any budget specifically to go and support the CARA initiative?
So what we're doing is Lee Gill is our new vice president for DEI, and he will be here May 15th. And that's going to be one of his first goals will be to look at all the services we have under that broad umbrella and see what service gaps we have, what we need to do. And so that's another resource issue that we'll have to deal with. All right. Any other questions or comments? And remember, you can just Google strategic plan on our website and go make other comments. We would appreciate it if you think about it and go look at the plan online. We covered it pretty quickly here, but this is our plan. It's our university, and we want each of us to be successful in it, and we want our students to go out and make this world a better place for everyone. So thank you for all you do every day, and I hope you enjoy Derby Week. Take care. Thank you.